my house washed away. I had a cat, I had two geckos.
We lost everything, family, friends, homes, our jobs, everything, our animals.
Did y'all hear about them sundown towns that just got swept away in the hurricane?
Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about this viral Helen versus sundown towns discussion that's going on TikTok. Let me preface this by saying that I do not believe in the supernatural, and also keep in mind that if you want your content to be seen, you do have to self-censor. So you will see blurred images, and I will be speaking in coded language. I know it's annoying, but it is what it is. So I created a resource for those who have been impacted by Hurricane Milton. It includes information on how to find help, donate, and volunteer. The link is in the video description of this video on YouTube, or if you're on TikTok, it's a few videos before this one. And while I was creating that resource, I came across a few articles and comments about Hurricane Helen. I realized that Helen's damage is far worse than I thought it was. And I was wondering why it felt as though the news stations were minimizing its impact. So I did a little digging. Here are a few snippets from people who are talking about some of the damage Helen has caused. Be sure to check out their full videos on TikTok.
Saw a couple clips today of a woman named Lee Brown. She's telling the truth out there. She's reporting on some tragic events that have happened here in North Carolina. She's up in the mountains talking about things the mainstream media won't talk about. Unfortunately, it seems like the politicians don't care too much either. But I don't want to politicize this. It's a very tragic event. These are people that were just living life, trying to mind their own business in the mountains, not the coast. And it's pretty tragic. My family's all from up there. We're the only part of my family that moved away from the mountains.
I need people to understand that Western North Carolina is more than Asheville. I need people to understand that Western North Carolina is more than Boone and Appalachian State University. I need people to know that this is the Biltmore Estate, and this is the river, and it sits way above the river. I need people to understand that this footage that you're seeing is Biltmore Village and not the house. I need people to understand that Chimney Rock, North Carolina is gone. I need people to understand that the roads are impassable. I need people to understand that this flooding is in Spruce Pine, and that this devastation is in Burnsville, North Carolina, Marion, Weaverville, Hendersonville, Silva, Cullowhee, Murphy, Robbinsville, and a lot of eastern Tennessee all look like this. The flooding was bad. There were winds of 100 miles per hour or more, and now there's landslides and mudslides happening everywhere. There's no power, there's no cell phone signal, no phone signal, no water, no food. They're running out of fuel. The damages are in the billions of dollars. And
I'm so angry. I am so angry that the news is not actually accurately showing what the hell is happening in Western North Carolina and Tennessee. I was there all last week, Monday, through the hurricane, and finally got home at 1:30 in the morning on, I guess, September the 29th, Sunday morning, September the 29th. However, when we were driving home and escaping from Asheville, trying to find any route that would actually work north of Asheville, we saw the mountain towns. We saw the rural parts. We saw houses completely flattened. We saw driveways that are now rivers and people cannot get across to go get the resources that they need. We saw barns completely destroyed. We saw a tractor trailer truck on its side in trees. We saw a farm silo, a huge farm silo, just completely uprooted and just floating along. Not even floating along, just sitting there on a road.
I also saw a few people talking about how the area has valuable minerals, and the residents refused to leave when they were asked to do so by the government. You'll have to Google that. But one thing that stood out to me was the chatter about sundown towns. Some people are pointing out that a lot of the damage that was done by Helen was done to sundown towns. Let's take a listen.
Grand Rising TikTok. Man, I just found out that the hurricane only hit all sundown towns all across the South. Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, all them sundown towns, God.
So, they talking about Hurricane Helene done hit all the sundown towns. Well, not all of them, but like a lot of the sundown towns.
So everybody has been talking about these sundown towns as of late and how this hurricane veered directly in the path of these sundown towns in North Carolina. Well, this right here is an interactive map of the current and suspected sundown towns across the United States. Do you guys see all of this over here? Now, this area over here is where Hurricane Helene created most of the damage. As you can see, around this area, there are a lot of sundown towns. And in case you don't remember, here is the path of the hurricane. Does that look familiar to y'all? Look at that, because it was. Now, according to spiritual nomenclature, the true meaning of hurricane is the spirit of the melanated woman. Now, if you ask me, do I think this is the spirit of the ancestors doing this? The spirit of the carbonated woman who is really God in the physical that is doing this? Well, you tell me. Now.
So does anybody else find it odd that the majority of places hit by Helene is sundown towns?
All right. So before we continue, let me just say, I am a brown-skinned, melanated girl that survived Katrina and lost everything in floodwater. Okay, so let's get that straight. But now we're gonna get into this. It's come to my attention that a lot of people on this app don't realize that sundown towns still exist, or even know what a sundown town is. So sundown towns are basically towns where melanated people either need to be inside at a certain time, or they need to be outside of the city limits at a certain time. If y'all don't believe me, y'all could go online and Google a map of all the sundown towns that still exist. And it's just mighty coincidental that Hurricane Helene flooded out a lot of those sundown towns. No, I'm not saying that they deserved it. I don't want y'all to think that I'm saying. I don't think anybody deserves to lose their entire lives, at the blink of an eye because of a storm. They exist. Don't be delusional. They're still out there. There's still racism out there. I feel like people brushing it under a rug because it's a tragedy. I get that. But the facts of the situation is that a lot of these places were sundown towns.
Let's talk sundown towns and this hurricane. A lot of people have not unpacked their baggage from Christianity, and they've now decided that this hurricane was a punishment from God to all of the sundown towns. So let's talk about those sundown towns. And then there's other people who claim that they don't know what a sundown town is. And that I actually believe, because I'd never heard the term sundown town until I was an adult. But I very much knew what it was because my grandfather was born and raised in a sundown town in Oklahoma. And I heard him talk about it when I would ask him what it was like growing up in Oklahoma. So where are these sundown towns?
It's not that the South doesn't have them, but I got some questions about Indiana. Oh. New York, you guys are not off the hook here. Wisconsin, we have to have a conversation.
Appleton, Wisconsin was a sundown town until 1970.
California, you guys aren't off the hook either. In Oregon, you've got a whole different set of issues.
You see, Oregon was a whole-ass sundown state. They put it in their state constitution in the 1840s that black people were not allowed to live there at all. And even though that was canceled out by the ratification of the 14th Amendment, it still remained in their state constitution until the 20th century. And a lot of people from the Northeast and the Midwest and the West Coast are probably going to be very uncomfortable looking at a map of sundown towns. They're probably going to do the same thing that a lot of the Southerners do, which is, oh, well, the past is the past. Don't we want to move on, from this ugliness? And to that I say, well, then you need to come get your hate groups now.
Because have we moved on? California has the highest number of hate groups in the United States. They actually have more than double the number of Georgia. In Washington, you have a pretty high number of hate groups per capita, including being the headquarters of the Proud Boys.
I'll just expound on what was stated in the video for those of you who weren't familiar with sundown towns before this video. Sundown towns, also known as sunset towns or gray towns, are all YT municipalities or neighborhoods in the United States that exclude non-YT people through local laws, intimidation, or physical means, if you know what I mean. The term sundown comes from signs that directed non-YT people to leave town by sundown. I would like to remind or educate any Asian or Asian American people who may be watching this that this applies to you too for the most part. I'm bringing this up due to the recent Supreme Court decision that did away with affirmative action. In this particular sign, they were letting Japanese people know that they were not welcome there. And this blurb is about Filipinos. Sources say that these towns became prevalent around 1890 and continued until the civil rights movement in the mid-20th century. However, we all know that these towns still exist today. Many sundown towns drove out their POC populations, posted sundown signs, or passed laws barring POCs after dark, or prohibiting them from owning or renting property. Personally, I believe it's just another hurricane. I don't think it has anything to do with supernatural forces or revenge or karma or anything like that. And I think something like this can happen to any of us. So we should definitely stay prepared. Let me know what you think about this discussion and be sure to like this video and subscribe or follow for more content.